Welcome to this very first part of a new series of Python tutorials. There are quite a number of tutorials available. The difference is with this one is that we use Anaconda by Continuum Analytics to do the work. It's a unified Python distribution that includes a whole bunch of goodies. What we're interested in besides all of the scientific packages is also the IPython notebook. And that's the other difference. We're going to use the IPython notebook as our development environment because I think this is probably the best way for you to learn Python. Okay, we start by installing, and I'm going to do Linux first. I'll probably put together a Windows version as well, but it should be more or less the same. That's the whole idea behind Anaconda. So you go to the website, continuum.io/downloads, and then in my case, I now have downloaded the Linux 64-bit installer. Obviously, pick the correct installer for your platform. Okay, so let me just go to my downloads directory, and under Linux, I will now just run bash on the installer that I downloaded. First, it wants me to read this license agreement, and then type yes at the very end. And then it asks me if it can install that in the default directory, to which I also say enter, meaning yes. And then it takes a while to unpack everything from a 300 megabyte archive. So this includes Python, IPython, and a whole bunch of scientific packages such as NumPy, SciPy, scikit-image, which is image processing extensions, templating libraries I see here, even Erlang, which is a language for parallel processing that's used by WhatsApp, for example, Matplotlib, with which you can make high-quality graphs and other plots, and a whole bunch of other goodies. I've chosen, also Qt as you can see here, I've chosen to use Anaconda because it works the same on all platforms, and also because it's very easy and by default installs in an environment separate from your system Python. I'm doing this as a user, for example. So I'm not going to add the path to my default path. I'm installing this as a normal user, and I have now an isolated directory, and that contains all of my Anaconda Python goodies. Okay, so Anaconda itself is a kind of a default virtual environment. I have to activate that first, meaning that everything I run that has to do with Python will come from Anaconda and not from my system Python, which is what I want in this case. So I go source, in the Anaconda directory, I go source bin activate, and I have to specify the Anaconda directory itself because this will be the environment in which I'll work. Okay, then you can say it says prepending home the whole Anaconda bin path to my system path. And if I now type which IPython, so I can see here the IPython will come from Anaconda, and so also, for example, Python itself. So IPython, it's just a very nice Python shell, but we're actually interested in starting a notebook. So let me just go IPython notebook, and what will then happen is that it will start up my browser with this notebook interface over here, and this is what we're after. I think this is a really nice way to learn Python, and you'll see why in hopefully a minute or two. So let me just create a notebook. And I can rename that and call it, in this case, let's say part 1. And now what this notebook is, it consists of cells that you can make. So for example, in this case, let's do our little hello world. That's valid Python. In this case, Python 2.7. In Python 3, I would just use parentheses around that hello world. Okay, let's go control enter. That will execute the cell and show me the output. Right. The nice thing about this notebook is that I can now go back and I can change my mind. Whoop. I'm typing blind here, and I have new code. And I can save this notebook by pressing Ctrl S. And when I come back tomorrow, I can just open up this notebook and continue. I can also make a new cell to go playing, for example, cell, and then I usually use the hotkeys in this case. Insert cell below. So I have a new cell to play with. I can always go back to the previous cell. I can make new cells, insert cell above. And I can even change the type of the cell. In this case, for example, it may change to a markdown cell. You all know markdown. This is a mark. So this is very nice. If you also want to document your experiments, you can add little bits of markdown in there. So the IPython notebook can do much more than that. I can also insert link to images on the web. I can even input or insert YouTube videos, whatever you want. And obviously, when I save this notebook and I come back later, I can find my whole notebook again. Let's just see how that works. So I'm going to close this down. And then back in the console or in the terminal, I have to press Ctrl-C to shut down the notebook server. So let's see what happened over there. You can see the part1.ipynb. That's the notebook. Let's start up the IPython notebook again tomorrow. It's the day after. There's my notebook. I click on part 1 and I've got all my work back and I can continue playing like this. Okay, just to whet your appetite for the next lesson, I'll show you what the function looks like. There we go. So if I press Control Enter now, which means to evaluate the cell, nothing will happen. It's just defining that function, but I can invoke the function like that and press Control Enter again. And what that's doing now is that it's invoking that function, which is, well, one could call it a kind of a macro or a kind of a stored collection of instructions. It's passing it the parameter Python person, which inside of the function is now known or bound to name. And then it's printing out, hello world, your name is Python person. I can now also go to a new cell down here, and then I can say, I can reuse that function. There we go. Same function. I can go upstairs again, modify the function, Control Enter to execute. I think also, there we go, run in place, or just run. If I press run, it will run the cell and jump to the next cell. That's Shift Enter versus Control Enter, which is run in place. Let's just try Shift Enter. I go Shift Enter, it immediately jumps to the next cell, and I can execute this one again. And you'll see that it's now used the new code because I went and redefined the function, and then everything thereafter that I then execute will reuse this new redefined function. Okay, so that was it for this part 1 in this series of Python tutorials. What we did is we installed on Linux using the Anaconda installer. We used Python, and we did that because now we have immediate access to the IPython notebook, and this is the thing that we're going to use in the future tutorials. Please, if you save your notebooks, you can always retrieve them again to continue in the next lessons. Thank you very much.